position, think of two or three environmental issues that are very important to you. For example, clean air, litter free streets. Then answer the following questions. Do you think it is possible to say in money terms how much these things are worth? What percentage of your income would you be prepared to pay to see each of these issues satisfactorily resolved? Skimming. Skim quickly through the article. The title asks, why do economists and environmental scientists have such a hard time communicating? What answer does the writer give to this question? Scanning quickly, find the part of the article that refers to a new paper by Professor Philip Krebs. What theory does he put forward in that paper? Careful reading and finding the structure of text. Read carefully through the whole paper. Don't forget to time yourself. Work out your reading speed by checking the reading speed chart. Then answer the following question. This article could be said to have this very common structure. Problem. Problem, proposed solution. Evaluation of the solution. Brief. Very brief statement. The problem, the purpose. Solutions. The writer evaluation of the solution. Make a summary of the article in the form of either outline, notes on a diagram, or try both. If you are in a group, compare your answer to these questions. See if you can agree on the structure and the best summary. Critical reading. Now that you have read the article, do you accept that approaches of economists and environmental scientists are so different that they will never be able to agree? Is there a fundamental conflict between economics and environmentalists? Never the twine shall melt. Never the twine shall meet. Why do economists and environmental scientists have such a hard time communicating? Academically, disciplines are often separate by gulfs of mutual incomprehensions, but the deepest and widest may be the one that separates most economy but the deepest and widest may be the one that separates most economists from most environmentalists. Almost all economists are intellectually committed to the idea that the type things people want can be valued in dollars and cents. If this is true, and things such as clean air, stable sea level, tropical forest, and species diversity can be valued that way, then environmental issues submit. Or so it is argued quite readily to the disciplines of economic analysis. Trade-offs can be struck between competing ends in principle at least, and one can begin to think about how the world's consumption of environmental goods can be optimized, and economists say subjects to be constrained. People cannot have everything they want. Most environmentalists objects to the very first step in the argument. The idea that environmental goods can be reduced, as they would put it, to a cash equivalent. In fact, most environmentalists not only disagree with this idea, they find it morally deplorable, so tempers on both sides start to be lost at the outset. Ordinary voters are far more likely to agree with the environmentalists on this than with the economics. To them, it seems absurd and wrong to suppose that a value can be put on, say, the survival of the Indian tiger, yet the fact remains that choices must be made. Even if environmentalists rule the world, choices would have to be confronted, and working backwards from these choices made according to whatever criteria it will always possible to calculate the economic values there were explicitly attached to different environmental goods. Environmentalist rulers might prefer not to know what these implicit valuations were, but that would not alter the fact that trade-offs measurable in the dollar terms had been struck. However, this does not prove that moving from values to policy, as economics prefer, will yield better results than working backward and reducing. If you care to values from policy, suppose that economics are very bad indeed at attaching values to environmental goods. Then it might be better to work the other way around. Take a guess at a good policy and leave the economics to do their pointless bookkeeping later. There is a lively debate in economics about valuing the environmental, and some strands of the literature do favor or at least sympathize with the environmentalist perspective. For instance, a new paper by the Philip Graves, a professor of the University of Colorado, suggests that economics systematically undervalue environmental goods, possibly by a lot. The standard approach to valuing public goods, including environmental goods, goes back to the classic paper by Paul Samuelson in the 1954. It says that in principle, governments should be guided in providing public goods by what people would be willing to spend on them if the goods could be brought in a market. One difficult is discovering what people would be willing to spend, but that point is all right, out of date. Mr. Graves' idea is that even if you knew how much of their existing incomes people would spend on environmental goods, this would not tell you how much they would spend if they were actually given the choice, because if people could buy environmental goods, they might work harder and earn more and spend the extra income on them. Mr. Graves suggested that people might work 10% harder on average. One component of this shift, at least some green activities and dropouts would get higher paying jobs or any jobs if they could spend their wages on environmental goods. That number, on which environment everything depends, looks awfully high. It may seem more plausible in Colorado than it would across Atlantic in, say, Essex, where if people had an opportunity to trade less environmental protection for extra leisure and private goods, they would probably take it. Still, if Mr. Graves were anywhere near right about this figure, the implies undervaluation of environmental goods by standard methods would be quite enormous. Does this point the way to detente? Probably not. If Mr. Graves is right about the theory and in the ballpark with his number, his analysis favors a very large expansion in effort to improve the environmental. Environmentalists would no doubt applaud the result, but Mr. Graves is still deplorably in their view, trying to attach monetary values to think he ought not. Mr. Graves' analysis and other green-friendly work by economists is still about economic efficiency, about striking a better trade-off, and in the end, about finding the point at which further spending on the environmental would be too much. How many environmentalists can even imagine such point? Source: Economics Focus feature article from the Economic to 2nd February 2002. Multiple reading skills and critical reading. This task is also concerned with practicing many of the reading skills we have been discussing. Again, including critical reading. The text is an extract from an article by Lester Brown in the Ecologist magazine, not to be confused with the Economics magazine, as you will see. Prediction. Study the title. What do you think the writer's argument is going to be? Establishing your own position. Do you think that looking after the environment is something that is usually going to cost us money? Or do you believe that looking after the environment could actually generate wealth? If so, how would the wealth be generated? Scanning. Quickly scan through the text to find the information. By what date does Costa Rica plan to shift entirely to renewable energy? Searching. Search quickly through the extract to find three examples of countries that have done something to bring about an environmentally sustainable environment for each country. Give one example of something they have done to achieve the same. Careful reading. Read carefully through the whole text. Don't forget to time yourself. Work out your speed by checking the reading speed chart. The text could be said to have this structure: problem, proposed solution, example to support the solution, implication of the proposed solution. In one sentence for each sentence. The problem, the proposed solution, the three main areas of the economy that will be affected by the proposed solution. Make a summary of the extract in the form of either outline notes or the diagram. Critical reading. Answer the following question. In what ways do the views of this extract contrast with the article from the economics and the task tent? Which text did you find more persuasive, the one from the economics or the one from the ecologist? Why? Have your own views have been changed by reading the extract from the Lester Brown's article in the Ecologist? Extract from the Safe Planet, from the Save the Planet and Prosper, Lester Brown. Today's global economy has been shaped by market forces, not by the principles of ecology. Unfortunately, by failing to reflect the full cost of goods and services, says the market provides misleading information to economic decision makers at all levels. This has created a distorted economy that is out of step with the Earth's ecosystem, an economy that is destroying its natural support systems. The market does not recognize basic ecological concepts of sustainable yields, nor does it respect the balance of nature. For example, it pays no attention to the growing imbalance between carbon emissions and nature's capacity to fix carbon, much, much less to the role of burning fossil fuels in creating the imbalance. For most economics, a rise in carbon dioxide level is little concern for an ecologist, such as rise driven by the use of fossil fuel is a signal to shift to other energy sources in order to avoid rising temperature, melting ice, and rising sea levels. An eco-economy is one of the satisfies our needs without jeopardizing the prospects of further generations to meet their needs, as the Brundtland Commission pointed out nearly 15 years ago. No small order. Converting our economy into an economy is a momentum undertaking. There is no precedent for transformation and there is no precedent for transforming an economy shaped largely by market forces into one